Good morning. Welcome to the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce Legislative Kickoff Update. We're going virtual with Zoom this year, obviously because of COVID. Normally we'd be with a large group right now, all face-to-face and live, but it's nice at least we can see each other and we can bring an update to you all, and we're happy about that. So I want to thank our delegation for joining us. You're going to hear shortly from delegates Krebs, Rose, Haven Shoemaker, and from Senator Reedy. That will happen in a little while. I want to give you a couple basic Zoom etiquette things. Maybe it's been a while since you've been on a call, since we've all been on like a holiday break, or at least hopefully you've all been on a holiday break. But you joined the call muted. So if you're not speaking, and only one speaking right now is me, if you could please make sure that you are muted. Background noise can really interrupt. And we are streaming this live thanks to our friends at CMC on, I know it's on Comcast HD 1086, and it's also on their Facebook page and their YouTube page and probably about 12 other places. These guys are great. So keep your mics actually muted. And we can see you, obviously, and it's great to be able to see you, or at least a lot of you. There's also a lot of you that have not enabled us to see you at this point, but I understand it's early in the morning. But if we can see you, just keep in mind, if you get up to actually leave the room, we can see that, and that can be a little bit distracting. So maybe you could just hide your feed at that time, and go ahead and react it. Bring it back when you come back in the room. So it's always best to join Zoom by computer. If you're on your phone number will not be displayed, and you'll be on mute. Couple quick things. I think I mentioned this earlier before we actually kicked off the meeting, but it's nice to know who you are. So if you would change your name on your screen, most people have first and last name, but if you could change your name, you just take your mouse and hover over your face, right click it, you'll get a drop down menu, and then you can rename, and you can put your first and last name and even whatever outfit that you're from, your business, your non-profit, whatever. But it's nice to know who we have in the room. Couple other things I do want to thank. We're going to have our actual Q&A at the end. So we'll have a lot of time, I think, for some excellent question and answer. So as we go through the meeting, if you have a question, maybe wait till the end, and we're going to be able to do it in a couple ways. You can go ahead and put it in like a text in the chat box, which is down at the bottom of your screen, or you can also simply raise your hand, and it's your digital hand, not your real hand. So, and then we'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end. I do want to thank all of our elected officials. I think I mentioned this before we started the meeting. I don't really have a list in front of me, and doing Zoom is difficult to see every person here. So I'm not going to name the elected officials, but I do want to say thank you for being with us. The same with our past chairs of the board. You folks really are the ones who help to make things happen here at the chamber. So some upcoming chamber meetings, and all of these currently are going to be virtual. January 12th, we have our State of the County address, where our commissioners will come to us and give us an update of what's going on in Carroll. And that's going to be at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 12th. And it's going to be streamed live from the Reagan room of their offices. And it's going to be a little bit different, but we're still going to get a chance to have a nice update. We have 2 new member orientations that'll be coming January 14th at 8:30 in the morning, and that's going to be virtual. You just go to our actual website, carrollcountychamber.org, go to our calendar of events, and you can register, or you can encourage a friend to maybe register who has not yet become a member of the chamber. We'd love to see them and tell them what it is that we do and why they should join. January 27th, we have another new member orientation. This one's at 12:30, so a different time of the day. And then February 18th at noontime, we have our county budget update with Mr. Ted Zaleski. He's always great. We usually would have a luncheon on that one, and we'd have like 100 and some folks attend. So it's free to attend this. So we'd really ask you, go to our website to actually register. So those are all the announcements I believe that I have, but I do want to thank our sponsors and give them a second to speak. Our first sponsor BGE has sponsored this event for as many years as I've been here, and I think a whole lot more than that. This is, I think, my 11th time through this event, and they've always been the sponsor. So I want to introduce to you and give her a chance to speak, Miss Laura McCoy, External Affair Manager at BGE. Laura, they're all yours.
Good morning. Thanks, Mike. First, I want to thank Mike and the Chamber and everybody who will be participating in the panel for this event. I'm very excited to get to hear the conversation this morning. And then I also just want to take a second to introduce myself. You all probably met my predecessor, Megan Eves, and we're used to seeing her on these, and she's actually moved on to a new role. So I am here. I'm your contact. If you need anything, I'll throw my email address into the chat box just in case anybody is in need of that. You know, it's exciting to be here at the beginning of the year. 2020 was a challenging year for all of us. We're not out of the woods yet, but I think we all can see a little bit of light at the end of this tunnel. And I know we've all had to adjust how we work, including BGE, but we want to make sure everybody knows that we're here and we're here to be your partner. So if there's anything that we can do and that I can help you with, that's what I am here for. And in that vein, one thing I wanted to make sure this group was aware of, and I will certainly be giving Mike more information about this as it becomes available, but a couple of weeks ago, BGE announced that it is pledging $15 million to assist small businesses with COVID-19 relief and recovery. So that program is actually going to launch later this month in just about 2 weeks. And so the small business grants will be up to $20,000. This is also a multi-year commitment. We're planning on running this program through at least 2023. So the materials aren't available just yet. Like I said, I'll be keeping Mike in the loop to make sure he has those, and we'll be talking a lot about it. So keep an eye out for that if anybody would be interested or knows anybody that would benefit from those grants. And with that, Mike, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Laura. We really do appreciate you guys and what you have meant to us for the longest time, and just want to let folks know that a couple things that people think about us that is not right. We're not part of the government, and we're not part of some larger chamber network like the U.S. Chamber, the Maryland Chamber. We're an independent, so your membership helps to drive events like this and other events that we do. So let your friends know. If they are not members, we'd love to have them come to one of our new member orientations. And our last sponsor is really a sponsor of almost every event that we do virtually nowadays. And that's our amazing friends at CMC. So I'm going to turn you over to Mr. Richard Turner, Executive Director of CMC, and thank him and his wonderful staff for everything that they do. They're all yours, Richard.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Mike, and thanks to the Chamber and the extended network that the Chamber provides. I look forward to working with you guys again this year in 2021 and with our local businesses to keep our local economy thriving and a shining star in our region. You know, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. It's hard to believe it's 2021. But I'm really looking forward to this year, having 2020 in the rearview mirror and behind us. Here at the CMC, we've got some exciting developments as we continue to innovate in digital media technologies. Thanks to our partnership with the Carroll County Public Schools, we're working once again for developing our coverage of local high school sports, and our CM Sportsnet is gearing up to cover girls and boys basketball. And this will be a first for us. So due to the partnership with them and NFHS Networks, which have installed some new technologies, some AI technologies in their schools that allows us to have more footage, and we can do more coverage of more schools. So that's really a great opportunity, especially when, you know, it's going to be a challenge for getting people out to the games. So we're really looking forward to that partnership. And we really appreciate the sponsors of CM Sportsnet. They help us extend the coverage to more schools. So thanks to those of you who have sponsored our programming. I see some of you here on the call today. And another partnership is with the Carroll Arts Center. We're going to be bringing live broadcasts and streaming of their events, including the upcoming Martin Luther King celebration. And that will be live and broadcast on our channels. In addition, we're continuing to expand our coverage of local municipal government as well, so that we can see more of those important proceedings, because a lot of that decision-making has a great impact on our lives. Don't forget, you can watch previous chamber webinars by going to the CMC's website at carrollmediacenter.org, where we have archived all the episodes. So if you've missed something and said, oh yeah, I want to see that one again, check out the YouTube site. And as always, I'd like to thank the CMC team for responding, especially during these challenging times, and keeping our community informed. I'm super blessed, and they are my superheroes. So Mike encourages us to shop local, and I encourage you to watch local by checking out our HD channel 1086 on Comcast, or heading over to our website at carrollmediacenter.org. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, share, do all that kind of social thing to help get the word out about some of the great programming and the great things that happen in Carroll County. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you again. All right, now we are ready to go to the meat of the show, and to conduct us through that, as is our norm, we ask the chair of our legislative committee. We have a committee that works for you, the business community in Carroll, and not just members of the chamber, but the entire business community. These folks are HR professionals, they're tax experts, they're banking experts, they're real estate experts, they're all kind of experts, a lot more expert than I am. And we meet once a week, starting in mid-January till normally the end of March. And they look at the different bills that are being introduced in Annapolis, and they look to see which ones look like they'd be good for business, in our opinion, and which would be bad. And they put together well thought out letters that they send to our delegation to kind of let them know how we're thinking about things. So this effort and all these people are corralled by this young lady right here, who's an amazing HR professional. So I want to turn things over to Ms. Dana Blum. Dana, they're all yours.
Thank you, Mike. And you stole all my lines, but that's good. But good morning. Welcome, everybody. And I hope you are all staying safe and relatively sane in these incredibly challenging times. To reiterate a little bit of what Mike said, during each General Assembly session, our committee meets weekly. Members bring forward many of the bills that are presented each session, and we discuss the merits or lack thereof of many of these bills. Our discussions are very wide-ranging and cover a number of different topics: taxes, business regulation, education, agriculture, employment law, and workplace regulation. Sometimes our discussions can become quite lively, but we enjoy that, and we do debate these issues. And ultimately, we decide whether we are going to support or oppose any particular bill. The member who brought the bill for discussion then drafts a letter, and then Mike transmits that letter to our delegation, our local delegation, as well as the appropriate committee chairs down in Annapolis. So we're pretty busy in that 3-month period of time. And obviously it depends on exactly how busy the General Assembly is on any particular year. And while we as a committee might not be able to predict what the hot topics are in any particular year, we're very fortunate that we have the insight and expertise of our local delegation to guide us and help us with that. So without wasting any more time, let's go to that. And I believe we are going to start with Delegate Susan Krebs.
Thank you, Dana. And I just want to start off by thanking the Chamber and letting you know what a valuable tool you are to us, the delegation, because, you know, we represent you and we don't know what the issues are with your businesses or with your institutions unless you communicate that with us. So it's really valuable, the resource you give to us. So thank you. And please reach out. We are available by phone, by email. It just doesn't have to be a couple of times a year. And we obviously miss the camaraderie at breakfast and talking to folks and what your issues are, because you're the ones that give us the real live on the ground, what's happening and how these things affect your business or the school system or the community college. So please, we are here to be reached. That's why we post our phone numbers everywhere, and please do that. Obviously, last year, when we were in session, what a difference a year makes. I mean, who would ever think we're in this situation? And as I look at every single picture on this screen, every one of you has been impacted in your organizations, your family, every single person, every Marylander has been impacted in this year. And it's been very, very challenging. But I think we've learned a lot, and we have a lot to do. When we left the legislature last year in the middle of March, we left early. And in 3 days, we passed 700 pieces of legislation in 3 days. I'm not going to tell you that was carefully done. It was hastily done in many situations. I won't get into that, but we're going to have some cleanup to do. Some of the bills that we put through were necessary to get us through the pandemic, but whoever knew what we had ahead of us. So now we have the session starts. We've all been remote all year. I can tell you that this delegation has worked very difficult in a different manner this year, dealing with different issues, whether it be unemployment issues. My aide works full-time on unemployment issues for your workers or your businesses. We've been working on issues regarding getting daycares back open, our schools reopened. We've been working on issues regarding our nursing homes and our hospitals and our assisted livings, and just it's a whole new norm. So we've been very, very busy on subject matter that we've never really had to deal with before. So on Tuesday, we begin, well, actually on Wednesday, we begin the legislative session and at noon, and we have to show up to change the rules for the future to say that we don't have to show up. In other words, the law basically says, the Constitution, we have to show up every day for 90 days. And we've got to actually change the rules so we don't physically have to be there for certain things. So we're all going to show up at noon on Wednesday. We're going to have 2 chambers open, split up in the House. The Senate's all going to meet at the same time. And we're going to do some rule changes so that we can do some remote business. We still don't know what it's going to look like. All of our committee hearings are going to be remote on Zoom. You can be wherever you want. We can be in our office in Annapolis in Zoom. We can be home. You can be wherever. And that's going to be an interesting way to proceed. So we are not real sure what that's going to look like yet either. And then we'll come back together, they tell us, in about a month and start passing legislation on the floor. Last year, a lot of things were sort of in process. And I'm not going to talk about these issues because Haven and April sit on the Ways and Means Committee, but education was a huge issue in the Kerwin Commission. That bill got vetoed. A number of bills got vetoed by the governor last year because of the fiscal impact. And here we are entering a crisis, and we had this huge all these bills with huge fiscal notes on them and no way to pay for them. So that's going to be of interest, what happens with the governor's vetoes from last year, whether or not, it's not the merits of the bill, whether they're good or bad, it's just how will we pay for these things in this pandemic. So it has been an unprecedented amount of time. And Maryland, I serve on the Health and Government Operations Committee, and that has sort of been ground zero for the COVID issues for this whole session. We've had briefings all session on the different issues, whether it be testing, whether it be nursing homes and hospitals. Last year, right before we left, we passed some very important legislation having to do with telehealth, because before that, we really didn't have a very rigorous ability to do telehealth. And what would we do now without the ability for our medical professions to be able to do things remotely? So we're going to be doing a lot of cleanup on telehealth and making sure that doctors have the ability to practice how they need to through telehealth and reach our patients. Another issue that our delegation worked very hard on early, I guess, in the summer was childcare. That was an issue. Everything was shut down, and our child care centers were shut down. Well, as you all know from your employees, people need to be able to get to work. So as things reopened, we had a problem because people didn't have a place to send their kids. So they were sending them to unlicensed daycare centers. They were getting family members to help. So we have very successfully, I believe, opened the majority of our child care centers very successfully and safely. Unfortunately, 16% of our child care centers in the state have permanently shut down, we believe. Carroll County has done pretty well. We have 95% of our child care centers are reopened. They still have a lot of burdens with safety issues, but we're like the 6th best in the state with our child care centers. So I appreciate them stepping up and going to work every day so that their parents can go to work. I do want to just I see we have school board members on this call, and I want to thank you all and the superintendent. You guys never signed up. No one signed up for the decisions, the difficult decisions that are going to have had to be made regarding opening our schools. I watched your meeting the other night, and my heart just goes out to you and the burden of making a good decision. I want you to know that you have our support. I think you all are trying to do what's best for our students. If you can hear in the background, in my house, my daughter is living with me because they're getting ready to move. She's a teacher in Montgomery County. She's been remotely working with a 10-month-old and a 2-year-old here. I know the difficulties, and I also know that it's not working very well. I mean, as much as everyone's trying and it's stressful, it is a real challenge to try to engage students remotely. And we've done a good job at it, and teachers have been heroic. But I can tell you firsthand that I know the challenges that they're facing all of our staff members. So thank you all for the courageous decisions that you've made. And if you need any help with regulations and things not making sense from the state, please reach out to us, and we'll try to get you some answers. Just a couple of other things I just wanted to chat with you about, and you guys can ask us questions later. Unemployment has been a huge issue this year. Both for people that have lost their jobs trying to make claims. It has been a disaster. The system has been a disaster. I'm just going to say that out front. I've been very vocal about it. All of us have. Many of you businesses say, how is it going to affect you? It is going to affect businesses, unfortunately, because the trust fund is pretty much broke. But at the end of 2020, the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund will be largely depleted, and they have to make that back up. So unless we change the rules, they're going to be using the new tax tables, which is Table F, and there's a substantial increase to employer taxes, whether or not you've laid anybody off or not. So we're not sure if that's going to change, but right now it is, even employers with no claims history are going to see increases, pretty dramatic increases, up to 8-fold in their unemployment. So we'll probably be dealing with that as well during the session, but I expect that we're going to be very busy. They've told us that we're not going to deal with a lot of new issues that are not pertinent this year because we've just got to deal with the COVID issue. So I don't see, somebody asked about predictive scheduling and some of those odd issues. I don't foresee those things coming up because we have enough other things on our plate to deal with that really are really emergencies. So I don't see a lot of new, I hope not, a lot of new initiatives that will hurt our businesses because we're trying to get our businesses back on track. So I'll leave leave the education piece to my colleagues and Senator Reedy, and I'll be happy to answer any questions when we're all finished.
Thank you, Delegate Krebs. Next, we will hear from Delegate April Rose.
Good morning, everyone. And I also would like to thank the Chamber both for having this forum this morning and also to reiterate what Susan just said. Your letters and the information you provide are invaluable to us, and we really do appreciate all of your hard work. I wanted to, here we are 10 months later, and we all thought hopefully we'd be doing this and that we'd be past the worst part. And so here we are, and we're kind of rolling into a full year of this, which is kind of hard to believe. I think that we've learned a lot by going through this process. And I think that's what I'm really trying to focus on this session, processes and, lessons learned, and how can we hopefully not go through some of the things that we went through. Number one, I certainly hope that we never have to go through essential versus non-essential closures of businesses ever again. Every business is essential. And I know you all know that because your business is essential to you, your employees, and your customers. And so I just, I'm very thankful. Every time there's a press conference, we all text amongst each other, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I'm glad that we made it through the holiday season without any further shutdowns. I know through the spring, I started visiting a lot of businesses that were considered non-essential, just trying to get an idea and see all of the things that our business community were doing so that they could reopen and hopefully stay in business. And through that process, met a lot of great business owners, and I'm always happy to visit any of your businesses at any time. And one of the things that certainly the restaurant community, I've, kind of gotten to know a lot of the business owners, and I don't know if we have any restaurants on today. Thankfully, we're at 50%. I know they can hold on at 50, and I certainly hope we can't go backwards, and even 50% is a struggle. So I'm hoping that, we can start to, as we hopefully get past this surge and we hear, from the hospital and certainly from Mr. Singer that maybe, in another 2 weeks, hopefully we're going to turn a corner. And so hopefully we can move forward with that. So a couple of things that came out of, the lessons learned through our caucus. I am running a good governance work group. Delegate Krebs is a participant of that, and Delegate Shoemaker has a piece of legislation coming through that as well. So I'll let him talk about that one. A couple of the issues that are of big concern, and I certainly would love to get, any input from the business community. I'm working on a business liability protection bill so that there's protection to you during a catastrophic health emergency, such that we just went through. Hopefully we never go through this again, but I think that it's something to be concerned about. So looking at burden of proof and things that will protect you so that there aren't hopefully some nefarious or not good lawsuits that could be brought against you based on someone either getting sick in your places of business. So working on that, and then a couple of the other bills that I'm working on. We've been dealing with a lot of executive orders, and I know, you all read them and we read them. Sometimes they're very confusing, a little vague, and maybe difficult to interpret. One of the biggest ones that's been a concern, and I've heard from several business owners about this, most specifically with restaurants, is the executive order that has given our health officers basically complete autonomy in determining, what business can be cited, what business can be shut down. And it's caused a lot of angst and fear and anxiety in the business community. And so while I certainly understand that the health officer should certainly be a part of dealing with a pandemic such as this, the problem is there's no transparency in what the rules are, what is the process, what are the rules exactly. We have different employees from the health department going in. One person may say one thing this week, another one comes in and says something the following week. I've heard that there's been conflicting directives given about different things. And so I think it's really important for the business community to have consistency and to know what the rules are. If you know what the parameters are, you can plan for them, you can adhere to them. And so I think that's extremely important moving forward. I think there should be an oversight board to look at these processes, and so that there is, sort of a check and balance on, are we doing this the right way? Does this make sense? So I think that's important. And then in the case where there is, conflict in a citing of a business for something deemed unsafe, the business may not agree. And I think it's really important that there's a process for appeal. Right now, we don't have that. It's just, that's the way it's going to be. And that's the end of it. And there's no recourse, there's no discussion, and there's no way for an appeal. So those are the main issues that I'm going to be working on. There's some additional bills that are also being worked on, and we're going to be meeting again, I believe, probably next week to go over those. And again, I'll let Haven discuss his bill on that. Now, the only thing I'm bringing back from last year, because I think it's of utmost importance, is, we certainly have figured out again where our gaps are, and we're still struggling, of course, with online learning. We're going to have it, sort of a hybrid model moving forward. And I think that I appreciate the school board making that tough decision. And I know I'm hearing from many parents who are very grateful for at least the hybrid. And I know many are very anxious to get, to the point where we can get our kids back in school. But everybody's online now. Everybody's using a computer. It's a necessity. And you've heard me speak about this before. Workforce development is extremely important for our students. I did get my bill passed that would allow a computer science class or a computer programming class count toward a math credit for graduation. Unfortunately, it passed through my committee, it passed through the House, I think unanimously. It made it over to the Senate, and because of the pandemic, it never got a hearing, and so it died there. So I am going to put that one back in. I'm hoping that that's a pretty easy one, and I think it certainly is a no-brainer. Our kids need to be not only encouraged to take computer science. I think it's been made painfully aware this is a must, for preparing our children for the future. And then the second one, which I also think is kind of a no-brainer, is getting a report from our school systems once a year, what computer science classes are being offered and who are taking them. Just to have the data to make sure that every single one of our children across the state have equal access to this important education. So those are really the main things that I'm going to be working on. And I really, again, appreciate all of you. My door is always open. My phone is always available. If you have any issue, again, as Susan said, and I know Justin and Haven are in the same boat, I've spent so much time this year, talking to business owners, listening to them, trying to help them out with specific issues. And I will always be very happy to do that in any way that I can. I appreciate what you do, and be happy to take questions at the end. But thanks for everything that you all do for our community.
Thank you, Delegate Rose. And next we have Delegate Haven Shoemaker.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy 2021. Let's pray that it's better than the last year. Normally when I do these legislative breakfasts, I'm one of those starry-eyed optimists heading into the session. Last year, of course, that's a joke, by the way, but last year I was certainly a pessimist because we were going into the last session that we knew was going to be largely dominated by the multi-billion-dollar Kerwin package. And it had been looming ominously on the horizon for some time. And I think I was right to be pessimistic about that. Of course, the governor vetoed it, and I'm pretty certain that the votes are there to override the veto. I mean, the question still looms as to how in the world that thing is going to be paid for. But this year, I don't think we'll see anything like that, at least not from a not the type of legislation that'll have that kind of a fiscal impact. But I fear we will see a lot of social justice type stuff that we'll be grappling with. Things like replacing the state song, Maryland, My Maryland, a lot of anti-police reform type measures, and I'm doing the reform with air quotes, efforts to change the way we vote in Maryland to make it completely vote by mail. I'm sure that we'll see that in my committee, the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm on the election law subcommittee. So we'll be dealing with those types of issues, but those are the types of things that I think we'll be grappling with this legislative session. And Delegate Krebs alluded to this earlier, notwithstanding the fact that leadership has signaled that, because of the pandemic that we're still dealing with, this session's supposed to be a minimalist type session where we just do the bare minimum the state needs to get through these very difficult times. But if you look at the 800 and some bills that have already been filed this year, they touch on virtually every social justice type issue or virtually virtue signaling type issue from soup to nuts. But instead, I think what I'd like to see us do is provide some more relief for Marylanders and Maryland businesses who, frankly, because of the actions of government in responding to the coronavirus, have suffered the most. And frankly, I believe that an apology is owed to the people of Maryland who've had to grapple with a virtually incompetent unemployment system. And it's not fixed yet. I got 4 more calls just yesterday. In one case, a woman from Tawnytown has been trying to collect unemployment benefits since March without success. It's ineptitude of the highest order. And the same thing I fear is being witnessed now in connection with the vaccine distribution. Bloomberg reported just last week that Maryland was dead last. And then, of course, there's the lockdowns, which have resulted in the permanent closures of, hundreds of businesses throughout the state of Maryland, including a number here in Carroll County. Now, Delegate Rose talked about some legislation that we may be looking at going into this session to try to correct some of the errors that we've seen as a consequence of the response to the pandemic. And one of those is a bill that I'm going to be putting in addressing the governor's unilateral ability to extend states of emergency in perpetuity. In 2003, I think it was, the legislature passed a bill that, I guess it was in response to 9/11, that gave the governor the ability to extend states of emergency without any legislative input. And we've seen that again and again and again since March, where states of emergency have been extended every 30 days without any legislative input whatsoever. And I think that is an issue that needs to be addressed and corrected. Bottom line is, I think we have to do better as a state. We have to let our businesses operate and operate safely without being harassed by unelected health officials. And we have to allow people to live their lives. And I think those should be our objectives going into this legislative session. I'm optimistic that we'll have some success in addressing some of the deficiencies that we've seen as a consequence of the coronavirus response. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I hope everybody has a healthy and safe 2021. So I'm looking forward to answering some questions.
Thank you, Delegate Shoemaker. And lastly, we'll hear from Senator Justin Reedy.
Thank you and good morning. I echo what my colleagues have said, that we are very happy to be on with you all this morning, participating in this, and look forward to certainly a 2021 that we hope and pray is better for just speaking for the business community, not the entire world, but obviously we hope it's better for everybody in the world, but also for the business community in particular. And the job creators, we hope and pray that 2021 is much better. I very briefly want to touch on a couple of items. Some of them have been covered. We expect this session will be unlike any it's going to be unlike anybody has ever experienced. While there is no roadmap for how to do it, we do want to be sure that the public is able to give the same kind of input or similar kind of input that they always are. And that we also, frankly, I think Delegate Shoemaker mentioned that the talk about there being more of a streamlined session where we're not getting into as many sticky issues, that would be good for Maryland at probably most any session. We're going to try to hold them to that. The majority party tends to want to, they'll say we want to limit things, but then it'll be like, but we have to do our grab bag of 8 or 9 priorities, and we need to be sure we're focused on recovering from the pandemic from a health perspective, or addressing it, and also helping the economy and our communities recover from all of the actions that were taken to deal with the pandemic. And I think what you've seen today already, and I'll echo it, is our District 5 team has been a very strong and forceful advocate for getting things back to some level of normalcy. We all take the virus and all the things associated with that seriously, but at the same time, we've argued and fought for balance in how things are addressed. We've had some successes in that regard, and then there's some things that we've not been able to necessarily get accomplished, but whether it's advocating for daycare providers, whether it's all of our staffs and us spending hours working on unemployment, which I agree is something that continues to be, it seemed like it was getting better briefly, and then it's been frustrating for those. There seems to be a group of people that we just can't get answers, and we're still working on that. So all of those things continue to consume our thoughts and our time. A lot of times when we talk at these briefings, we talk about what's going to be happening in the session, but also in our own committees. Many of you have been on this call, have been in our meetings and events like this before, but some may not have been. As legislators, we try to have a decent mastery of all issues, but of course, the way that works in the General Assembly is you're on a committee, a smaller committee that deals with certain issues. And so you tend to spend a lot of your best impact can be in your committee because you're spending most of your time there. You have the greatest impact on policies in your committee. I've been on the Judicial Proceedings Committee in the Senate for 6 years, and that is the law and order, crime and punishment, sort of the hot button legal issues. That's been the committee I've been on. It's going to be announced here today that I'm going to be actually moving to the Finance Committee in the Senate. And the Finance Committee is a committee that gets a whole lot of the business issues, the direct business issues that many of which we've talked about in the past, whether it's labor, minimum wage, predictive scheduling, some of the more outlandish ideas that come out about trying to basically, I think, ruin small business in our state. We also get healthcare issues, many of them, and we get energy, workers' compensation. Unemployment, the unemployment system is overseen partly by a different committee, but we certainly have a part to play there as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to sink my teeth into those issues at a deeper level because of being on the Finance Committee. Carroll County hasn't had a resident Carroll senator on that committee for over 30 years. So we had senators that had pieces of Carroll County that were on it, but I think it's an important committee for our business community, our hospital, our healthcare system. So I'm looking forward to working on those issues moving ahead. One of the big priorities from this on the Senate Republicans we've been meeting and talking And one of our biggest priorities, in addition to some of what you've heard already today, one of our biggest priorities is finding ways to be sure we're protecting businesses from liability whenever possible for pandemic related actions or the impact of the pandemic. We want to do our best to be sure that we are making Maryland's business climate better for small businesses and businesses of all sizes. In addition, I know that there's going to be a big push from our hospital association in the state to try to be sure that they are exempted from liability as well as it relates to emergency medicine, which is going to be important because of a number of issues. Hospitals were asked to jump in, and health providers were asked to jump in basically without a whole lot of knowledge and put forth a lot of energy and effort. And in that of course there are going to be people who got the virus, and so it's important for both our hospitals and our business community to not be unfairly punished for a virus that is obviously contagious and can be gotten a whole lot of places. So that's one of the big issues is liability issues for business. Certainly, I know that Delegate Krebs mentioned unemployment insurance and the concerns about putting aside the functionality of the system, the concern about unemployment rates skyrocketing. That's something that needs to be addressed right away. So those are very important issues we'll be looking at in the session. I think speaking to some of the more outlandish business proposals that we sometimes see, I am hopeful that things like predictive scheduling are not going to be part of the discussion this year. I can't imagine why we would want to, whether it's that or higher taxes, which are on the table in some cases. I can't imagine why we would want to do that in the middle of a difficult economy and still trying to kind of navigate the situation that we find ourselves in. There are a number of vetoes. The governor vetoed several bills, and I was glad that he did. Of course, Delegate Shoemaker mentioned the Kerwin bill, massive education spending increase. And that I imagine the General Assembly is going to override the veto. But then immediately, my understanding is there's going to be a push to try to make some tweaks because they know they can't afford it. So they could just let the governor's veto stand and say, let's get back to the drawing board and find some sensible ways that we can support education and do more for education. I think we may need to reorient the bill based on what we've seen in the past few months with the way education has changed and had to change in some cases. And so there may be, I think it's something we ought to really be going back to the drawing board on. I don't anticipate that the General Assembly as a whole will agree with what I just said, but that's what I think we ought to do. We also have tax increases that are aimed at creating, Maryland's going to be, if Governor Hogan's veto on this bill is overridden, there's a bill to not only increase tobacco taxes and create a vaping jewel tax, a massive tax on basically on people who can least afford to pay it. But then in the same bill, they have in the same package of tax increases, they've created a digital advertising tax that they think that they can just get Facebook to pay us taxes and Google to pay us taxes, the state, but that's not going to happen. Those advertisers are going to pass that down to the people who are buying the advertising, which is again small businesses and job creators in our community. So there's creating a first in the nation tax on digital advertising, and that's a veto that's up that the General Assembly is going to, I think, move to override, and we strongly oppose. So from that perspective, there's a lot of, even if some of the more, I'll call them crazy, out there ideas, anti-business ideas don't come to the forefront this session. I do anticipate there's still a lot of things we're going to be battling on as it relates to, as I said, taxes, liability protection, unemployment insurance, and the unemployment system. So we appreciate getting the input from the chamber because it helps us to understand. We know you don't want taxes to go up on digital advertising. I think that's one we can figure out for ourselves. And we know that would be bad for business, but sometimes there are issues that, we may not know as much about. It might be an issue that affects a certain type of business, and it's not something that would necessarily be on our radar screen. So anytime we can hear from you all, both individually and as the chamber, we really appreciate it. And so with that, I'll stop and say, look forward to answering any questions. And again, thank you for having us on.
Thank you, Senator Reedy, and thank you to all of our delegates. We do have time for questions. You can certainly enter them into the chat box on your screen. And between Mike and I, we'll try to catch them. Maybe Mike will try to catch the hands up and I'll try to catch the chat box, either way. But I kind of want to highlight something that Senator Reedy just said, and also what I believe Delegate Krebs mentioned earlier, is that all of the folks in Annapolis need to hear from the people who are most affected by any particular bill. And that's you all. You know, it's our job on the committee to try to capture that information and send it along, you know, as from the chamber. But we would also like and need to hear from you as well. If there's a particular bill you want us to take a look at and take a position on, shoot us a message, let us know. But I would encourage everybody that if there's something that you feel strongly about, is to write your own letter, make your own phone calls, or again, reach out to the Chamber's Legislative Committee and let us know. Because as much information and insight that these folks have, they're not running your business. You are running your business. And they need real world examples to know exactly how these things will affect you. So I encourage you all to do that. So again, we're open for questions. I'm not seeing anything right now. I don't know if Mike sees anything, but.
Yeah, I don't right now, but I do want to say something that kind of goes with what you just said. And that's that we're always looking for people to serve on our legislative committee. This is a group that is involved. You don't have to be that involved, but it's just good to get involved. And if you have a passion for this, for trying to help in this light, like in this area, please give me a call. You can email me. All my information is on our website. My cell phone is 410-977-3111. You can call me. Would love to get you on our committee. I know we have some of the folks on our committee are on this call. I do have one question. Oh, here's a question that we're getting. Let's take a look here. I can read this one. This is from Pat Dorsey. Where does the delegation stand on social justice? CCPS attempts to embrace diversity. How can you support that effort? So I would imagine anybody from the delegation could respond to that if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll respond. I think that it's always good for us to encourage diversity in the way that we see the world, and in the way that we encourage. We want people. I think you're talking about Carroll County Public Schools. I can't speak specifically to what they're doing, but I think that anytime that we can encourage, we want people of all races, colors, creeds, religions. We want everybody to feel welcome in Carroll County, and to be a part of what we're trying to do here in our community. One of the things, the challenges that we often see in Maryland, however, in the political scene, is there's not always a lot of, as we relate to the state level, there's not always a lot of respect for a diversity of opinions and viewpoints. And so as a delegation, one of the things we think our job is in Annapolis is to be sure that we're articulating a different viewpoint than maybe is the dominant view there. And so for us, the idea of more economic freedom for people to make their own decisions, the idea that we want everybody to be safe in their communities, safe from crime, safe from things that trouble us, safe from drugs, safe from, the things that we see all the time, whether it's on television in some places or in our own communities. That's all kind of part of what we try to do to promote a diversity of thought and a diversity of viewpoint. It grieves me as somebody who believes, I'm a Christian. I believe God created everybody to be equal. That the color of somebody's skin or the way somebody thinks doesn't impact how they're valued, what their value is. sort of grieves me at times that we kind of boil it down to sort of one thing versus another, and things get pitted against each other. I'm a big believer in speaking about ideas and talking about ideas and principles and how they can impact whatever community of people. So I can't speak for all of us, but I mean, I think our focus is building a diversity of viewpoint in Annapolis as much as possible. But I also think you'll find that any of us are willing to sit down with somebody who doesn't agree with us and talk with them and hash out ideas. May not agree on the issue or agree on the specific policy. Sometimes we may find we do have more to agree. That's one of the most interesting things about being in politics, is that you'll often sit down with somebody and you think that you are just totally diametrically opposed and everything. But as you start to talk about life and things, you end up finding out there's actually a lot we can agree on. We may not agree on every specific point, but we agree in theory and in principle on what's important. So I think that can be our best job as the delegation is trying to be sure we're promoting that there's a freedom of thought and a freedom of sharing ideas. And in Annapolis, try to be sure that sort of the principles that we feel make our county really great are getting out there and being given a full hearing.
I just wanted to add a couple of other things. First of all, the education issue, I think many of us understand who that really impacts. It impacts our lower income students and our special needs students the most. And I think this has been the biggest social injustice we've had during this whole cold COVID, is the haves and the have-nots with education. And that's why I'm really very pleased that the Board of Education understands how important it is that all kids get an education and not just those who can afford private school. Another issue that's coming up, and it came up in Congress just this week, that it bothers me as a woman, but member of the Women's Caucus, is this effort to take away gender identity. And in Congress now, you can't call someone mother, father, brother, sister, him, her. And we see some of that with some of our new members that are very, I say this, far to the left. They don't want anyone identified by gender. Well, women have come a long way with Title IX, and now they're trying to wipe a lot of that out. And we need to be careful that the gains that we've made for women and for minority communities, we're not wiping out in a different way by not being able to identify. I don't mind being called she. And the fact that now Congress has made a decision that you can't use any gender. And I know my daughter works at Montgomery County Schools. They're not allowed to use gender either. And if someone decides that they don't want to be called he or she, that's fine with me. But what about the rest of us? What about the other 95% that want to be? I'm a female and I'm proud of that. And I don't want to be called it. So the political correctness has gone too far, and I've seen this in, like I said, Montgomery County, and we need to be aware of that, because some of these issues, I think we all can agree, are being pushed by a small minority of people that do not reflect. We can be respectful of everyone, but that doesn't mean we have to give up our identities of who we are. So we need to be careful of who's pushing what and how far it's going. And then some of this gender stuff is going, in my opinion, is going a little too far. So just keep that in mind as well. It's not as simple as it sounds.
Thank you. Here's actually a great question from Andrea Bursler, I believe is. Has there been any discussion or consideration on deferring the Minimum Wage Act increase for this year?
I'll take that one, because I actually jotted it down on my list of bills. And this has come up recently because the first implementation, the first next level of implementing that, I believe, just went into play. And I'd love to hear from the business community how that's impacting you. But I believe, and I wanted to take time to go and look it up. I believe when we passed that bill, one of the rationalizations we got from those who were pushing it is because we said, well, how can we have automatic triggers when we have no idea what the economy will look like down the road? And we are living that right now. And I think it's unconscionable that while we've shut down businesses, we've made things extremely difficult. You've all had to spend, I have no idea how much money to adhere to CDC guidelines, buying sanitation equipment, everything that you're doing, that I think it's really important to use, if they called them off ramps. They said, well, don't worry. If things are looking bad down the road, we'll build in an off ramp where we can suspend that. And I think we really need to look at that right now. I actually think that we should, it's hard to take something away from employees. So taking away the current increase might be difficult. I doubt that our colleagues on the other side would go for that. I think it's warranted, but I think we absolutely need to look at suspending any further increases on the business community. I think we need to look at it there. I think we absolutely should not increase not one penny of tax on any business during this time. I just think that's extremely important. There are things that, this is a little off topic, but on Havens and my committee, I'm on the gaming subcommittee. We've got sports betting on the table. I think that's something, however you feel about gambling, we're surrounded by it. That could be at least somewhat of a revenue source. So I think we need to look at implementing things like that, but absolutely reject further assaults on the business community.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, didn't one of those automatic increases just go into effect the first of the year? I thought so. What's it up to now?
I believe it's 1175.
Is that right? Yeah, see, that's the folly. That's the folly behind those automatic milestones that don't take into account changes in economic circumstances. And Delegate Rose is absolutely right. That's an argument that we made that fell on deaf ears, tragically, but it certainly needs to be addressed going forward, no doubt about it.
Dana, there's another question in the chat box if you want to handle that one. Do you see it?
Yeah. Okay, from David Snyder. Most of the small business grants through the county have been restricted to those in a commercial or industrial zone. My business was only able to do 10% of our normal business in 2020 directly because of gathering limits. We are an event rental company, but the building we rent in is zoned as agricultural flex. Is there any way to help small businesses like ours as we may not survive past March?
I actually, David, I know I sent you a message because definitely I think we'd love to talk with you about your specific situation. This is one area where, as conservative as I am, I get a little bit like populist about if the government keeps you from doing your business, there is a responsibility because of it's different if you make a bad investment decision or something and you lose your business. That's kind of more, I don't know, the government owes you something, but that's not the situation. It's the government is in some businesses is saying you literally cannot do business or can only do a tiny percentage of your business. So I think the four of us would, want to be helpful, whether that's maybe a discussion about the county grants. That may be something we want to interface with the county commissioners on, but we can work on that. We definitely, in situations like this, whenever the government, though, I think they should be doing things like this, but whenever they create a program, there's always these like cracks that get fallen through where it's like, oh, you're not eligible because of something. So I definitely hope we could maybe find something that fits, but I just think in general, we need to continue. There needs to be a continued effort to give more support to businesses that really were, that especially one of the things about the PPP thing that happened at the federal level was it probably had to be done. It had to be done. There needed to be help, but the way that they created it was there was a lot of businesses that just could not. There were businesses that got these grants and loans that didn't really quote unquote need it. It helps any business. And I don't blame any business for jumping on the opportunity to apply for it. That's smart. But there were a lot of folks who couldn't get to those grants and loans, or it took a long time to get it from the federal level and trickling on down. So definitely want to try to help David, but also anybody on here who has a question or has tried to get access to these kinds of grants, whether it's county or state. We're certainly happy to try to see what answers we can find for them.
And just to tack on to what Senator Reedy just said, it just brought to mind when I was visiting businesses back in the spring. So you're in the event rental business. If you think about all of the events all the businesses that are impacted by it, the venues. I was out at Montague Meadows in Westminster, the Union Mills barn, and it affects all the caterers. It's affected, all of the things that would have been through the spring and summer and fall. The money makers for these businesses were completely impacted, again, because of the essential versus non-essential, which I think was very clumsily implemented and was drug on far longer than it needed to be. And so I think it's extremely important. And I think you bring up a great point. So I look forward to working with the delegation to address that.
And just as a follow-up, Andrea Bursler would just like to let everybody know that minimum wage has harshly impacted nonprofits as well. Fundraising and traditional financial supports are no longer operating as they did. Having spent a good part of my career working with nonprofits, I'm quite familiar with this. While we want very much to be able to pay our staff more because we think they deserve it, it's the difference between wanting to do it and being able to do it. So certainly fundraising down, but if you're a nonprofit who also depends on reimbursement from state or federal government, those reimbursements are rarely adequate. So when you lose, any income that you might have, any payment for services or that fundraising, it becomes very difficult. So that's certainly an issue. I think, April, your point about not being able to do much about the current increase, at least for existing employees, that may be true. But certainly if they decide to consider to pull that back, it would at least be helpful for new people coming in, new hires to not do that. Again, I doubt that there's a nonprofit out there who doesn't want to pay their folks more. But there's a big difference between wanting to and being able to. I'm not seeing any more questions just yet on my side. If anybody has any, now would be a good time to type them in the chat box or to raise your hand virtually.
Let me ask one real fast, and you guys may have already said this in the beginning, but at some point this year, are you expecting to actually be able to go to Annapolis to have meetings and things? I'm seeing, okay, head shakes.
And we actually are showing up. We have to show up on Wednesday, and we actually, the House has a call tonight with the speaker's head person to just tell us exactly what we're supposed to do, because people live 3 hours away. We still are planning to stay there and be available. We're not allowed to have staff. No one's supposed to come into our buildings. We're only supposed to have one staff member. We have to exactly know when they're going to be there. It's very, very strict. I believe some of it's unrealistic. We expect to go to the grocery store. We expect our Amazon package to get delivered, and people are out working, but somehow our office building is shut down and we can only have one staff person. We have a four-room office, but we're only gonna have one person there at a time. I think that it's a little bit overkill, but that's the rules that they've made up. They don't want to be present. So I believe we'll be back in February. I don't know what that's going to look like. It's going to depend on what's going on, but it's been a little vague to us.
Okay. And until then, like sessions and committee meetings would probably be live streamed, right? Oh, you are muted again, Delegate Krebs.
They will be a lot. All sessions and committee hearings will be live streamed, and actually voting sessions will be too. The Senate is also going down Wednesday. We apparently, I got a schedule last couple of days. We will have some floor activity throughout January, very limited. The House is not doing any floor activity. It is a little bit different in the sense they have 141 members, so we're able to, with 47, to be in a room and be in the Senate chamber and be distanced. But we're doing very limited. Like Susan says, I think some of it's a little bit over the top, a lot of it, but we're going to be very limited in what we're going to be down on, I think, on Fridays and Tuesdays, and we're going to have virtual committees. So that's how we'll do it up through early to mid-February. Then I think that's when there's going to be more evaluation about how much can be done.
And right now we're going to have committee on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, And they're gonna, this is a positive thing. They're gonna actually give you a time instead of sitting there all day waiting for your bill to be called. You know, could be 1 o'clock, could be 6 o'clock at night. They're gonna have different period. At least our committee is gonna have like a 12:30 to 2:30 time period, and then they're gonna be a half-hour break, and then so you'll know which period of time to log in on, so you don't have to sit all day for the people that are down there for a certain bill. So it might be a little more predictable, and you'll be able to log in from your home. One of the things we're trying to push from our good government committee that April's heading up, right now, when you do written testimony, only committee members can see that. And we believe that the public should be able to see the written testimony as well. Why just they want to allow the written testimony to be available after session. It's like, well, why can't we have everybody look at it live at the same time? So we're pushing for some of that transparency stuff so that everyone can see it at the same time. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, at least for on the House side on committees.
All right, because I'm going to be trying to get back with you folks as far as our state government day for Leadership Carroll. We're obviously not coming down to Annapolis, but we're going to be meeting off-site with the group on that day, and that's Tuesday, February 9th. So we want to try to figure out, we can do this off-site, but how we can plug you guys into it, whether it's by Zoom or if somebody could actually come and speak to the group. But we can talk about that later. Dana, there's a couple questions in the chat box.
I see it. Yeah, from Don Rowe, the executive director at the ARC Carroll County. He brings up a complication on the minimum wage issue. He says the way the minimum wage bill was written and approved, if there was a pause in the minimum wage, then organizations like the ARC, Target Community Educational Services, and 2 other organizations in the city who serve people that receive Medicaid and were included in the state wage increases would have to give that increase back to the state. Difficult situation. So I would hope, common sense would say, that if there is going to be a pause, that some of those provisions would be looked at to see if they're still, if they still make sense and are still equitable. So yeah, that is an extremely difficult situation. And then from Jim Ball, are there any legislative actions being planned to accelerate the COVID immunization process forward here in Carroll? Or actually,
and I serve on, as I said, I serve on the health committee. I don't believe that we have any legislative actions planned to accelerate COVID immunization process. I think it's being rolled out as quickly as possible. We had a delay at the beginning last week, as Haven mentioned. I think now that we got the National Guard involved, you're going to see a quicker rollout. I know I talked to Paul Langmead at Springfield Hospital the other day. They are totally immunized down at Springfield, all the staff members, all the patients. And part of the issue we've got is locations where to actually do the immunizations. I know Winters Mill High School right now is a site, which to me, I'm not sure why they chose that as a site, knowing that we were trying to get back to school. So they're going to have to change the location for that. We were doing stuff at the Ag Center, but I don't think there's appropriate temperature control. It just is not heated very well. But we have the Army National Guard Readiness Center they could be using. So it's a local issue how these are distributed. And I think it should stay that way because each county knows their local priorities. I'm not sure if we really want to the top-down approach from this. So I don't know that we're going to have any legislative actions. We will have briefings on, in fact, I think we did have a briefing about the nursing homes. Nursing homes are being taken care of by the federal government. They're a priority. CVS and Walgreens are doing all of the nursing homes. And right now, every nursing home, assisted living facility in Maryland is scheduled to get every single person immunized, even all the workers and all of the residents. So, and then the hospitals are taking care of their own. They should be finished in the next week or so. So I think the tier 1 is pretty much done, the 1A, and we're working on tier 2. The next issue is, where's education fall and all of that? Where's teaching staff? And really, it depends on how quickly we can get these vaccines distributed to the state. So I think we're going to see a lot of ramp up in the next couple of weeks. It was a little bit of a slow rollout, and it's going to take some time, but I think you're going to see it ramping up very successfully. I'm optimistic about it.
any other questions?
I think we're winding down.
I think
Oh.
we
We've got a thank you.
are. Yes, from Kelly Frager. Excuse me. Sorry, just got to pop up there. Thank you, Delegate Craig, Rose, Shoemaker, and Senator Reedy for your representation and for taking the time to be with us this morning. Thank you to the Chamber and Community Media Center for hosting this morning's session. Thank you, Kelly, and you're welcome.
Yeah. So I would say that is it for this year's legislative kickoff, and we've got a legislative wrap-up scheduled in April. I forget the exact date, but our calendar of events at carrollcountychamber.org will have that information. I want to thank everybody for being on the call, our delegation for giving of your time with this new actual normal that we seem to be having right now. Our sponsors, BGE and CMC, you guys are great. Dana, thank you so much again for helping to host this specific meeting, but more importantly, thank you for being the chair of our legislative committee for many years right now. And I know you've been on the committee for a long time, and I've signed you up for that long-term agreement that pays nothing. So just so that you know, the folks who help us with things like this, that help us to do what we do, they give of their time. So we need to keep in mind, everybody's making New Year's resolutions, going to lose weight, going to do this, going to do that. Don't forget, life as it is has made Amazon huge and has hurt the small business community. And this last year has just ushered people into the arms of Amazon, close down small businesses, make it easy to shop online and have things delivered next day to your house. Just keep in mind, the more we do that, the more we make it possible for small businesses that have been in our towns for decades to not be able to survive. So buy gift cards. If you can't go to a restaurant, buy a gift card to the restaurant. Help to support everything local that you possibly can. And that is it. I want to thank everybody again for being with us and to just say thanks. And at this point, the meeting's adjourned. You guys, everybody have a safe, wonderful day and an awesome 2021. We're going to get past COVID together. Trust, it's just going to happen. It's going to happen. So thanks.